Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I'm with General H.S. Panag, Northern Army Commander from 2007 to 8, and the Combat Group Commander in Eastern Ladakh from 1988 to 1990, and Lieutenant General D.S. Hooda, also the Northern Army Commander from 2014 to 16. Gentlemen, welcome to the Print Debates.
Thank you.
Now, both of you know this area of Eastern Ladakh like the back of your hands. I think you walked this whole area, and we are discussing the standoff in Ladakh in the wake of Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's statement in Parliament, and in the wake of the Chinese Defence Ministry and the Foreign Ministry statements over the last 24 hours, saying that both armies are going to withdraw from the northern as well as the southern banks of the Pangong Tso Lake. General Panag, your first comments.
I think a synchronized movement is on, as per the Chinese reports, with effect from 10th of February. But as per my understanding, there has been a certain amount of gradual disengagement or withdrawal from the depth areas, which has been going on ever since the last meeting was held between the corps commanders. Mm-hmm. And I would say it's a very good beginning, provided it's part of an all-encompassing agreement that eventually takes care of Depsang Plains and our apprehensions about the Kailash Range. As of now, we have agreed that we will have a phased disengagement from north bank of Pangong Tso and south bank of Pangong Tso, thereby implying that we are getting off the Kailash Range.
Right. General Hooda, what do you think? Do you think that this withdrawal coming after 9 months, the Indian soldiers have been on the heights in this deep winter, minus 50 degrees centigrade perhaps in some areas, do you think this is a good sign for both Indians and Chinese to withdraw and perhaps settle this issue?
Jyoti, I think it's a good positive step, and I say that because the most contentious area and the most visible area actually was the Pangong Tso area, and now that the disengagement has been agreed to both on the north bank and the south bank, and to some extent it also caters for our requirements that we had been expressing. We had been saying that the Chinese should go back behind finger 8 and restore status quo ante. Yeah. So I think it's a good step. As General Panag said, we just hope that is part of a larger disengagement process. The Raksha Mantri did make that statement. He said there are other areas too, and after this is done, that we will also engage the Chinese in other areas, like Gogra and Depsang. So I'm sure, once the process starts, we will see some positive move forward.
Right. General Panag, the point is that in the Raksha Mantri statements, the word or the phrase status quo ante doesn't figure. He says that both sides will pull back. He says that the Prime Minister, that's Prime Minister Modi, that not 1 inch of land will be given up to the Chinese. Are you concerned that that phrase doesn't occur, or do you feel that for the time being, it's enough?
Look, status quo ante has not been used by anybody for quite some time now. I think since September, we have not been using it. I mean, I'm talking including the foreign minister, where he's spoken a number of times, and whosoever has commented on the issue, we have stopped talking about status quo ante. Right. The fact of the matter is that the Chinese have reached their 1959 claim line in all areas except the Indus Valley, that is the Damchok area. Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to say, that the Chinese have reached the 59 claim line, and now what the agreement that is unfolding is, it has unfolded as if the first step has unfolded, that is for north and south of Pangong Tso, where the area between finger 4 and finger 8 will be a buffer zone. Mm-hmm. I foresee a similar buffer zone being there in the lower half of Depsang Plains, and that's where the largest chunk of area where we were being prevented from patrolling is there, though we had no deployment there. So that's about, close to 600 to 800 square kilometers. Even that will be declared as a buffer zone. So what is happening is that India has accepted the Chinese 1959 claim line, albeit with buffer zones in Depsang Plains and north of Pangong Tso, and maybe elsewhere where there are differing perceptions. The only area now left is the Indus Valley, where the Chinese have refrained from doing anything. That is because Depchok is a benchmark which is habited, and it has been developed as a model village, and there are Chinese commitment which says that we should not disturb those areas where there's habitation. So the Chinese demand, which was there ever since 1959 November, has been met. And if we have the buffer zones, most of which will be on our side of the our LAC, then there's nothing left. In fact, I think it's part of a bigger agreement which may unfold in the next 4, 5, 6 months.
Okay.
We may even further negotiate about the fact that now that 59 claim line has willy-nilly been recognized, that China could reconsider its claims in the northeast and in the central sector. And one last point, the fears about the Kailash Range and all these can be taken care of by also following what Zhou Enlai had said at that time, that we have a 20-kilometer demilitarized zone on either side of the 59 claim line. So this can further, sort of make sure that neither side just walks in. And in any case, to cater for the trust deficit, we will have to position forces so that if they can preempt us, we can also preempt.
So, General Hooda, I'm just going to read a little bit from what the Defence Minister said in Parliament. He said that there are 3 principles that determine India's approach. The first is that both sides should strictly respect and observe the LAC, that's the line of actual control. Neither should attempt to alter the status quo unilaterally. And third, all agreements and understandings must be fully abided by in their entirety. Now, are you concerned that the fact that there is the phrase status quo ante doesn't exist? However, he does say that neither side should attempt to alter the status quo unilaterally. What do you think?
Yeah, so, the issue about status quo ante, yes, I'm aware that the word is not being used. See, Jyoti, we have clarity only about the north and south bank of Pangong Tso. So I'm going to talk only about that. How Depsang will unfold, what kind of agreements will take place there is something, in the nature of speculation as of now.
Okay.
But as far as, for example, the North Bank is concerned, what we meant by status quo ante was that the Chinese should go back behind figure 8.
Right.
And that is something that has been agreed to by both sides, that the Chinese will go back behind figure 8. So even though the word status quo ante has not been used, on ground, it has translated in that manner.
Yes.
And similarly on the South Bank, the heights that were occupied by us on the Kailash Range was in the end of August. And so therefore, even there, it is status quo ante position that has existed in April. We will go back to those positions that we had held in April. So on both North and South Bank, without using the words, I think literally what is happening on ground is restoration of status quo ante.
Okay.
As far as buffer zones are concerned, are the buffer zones entirely on our side? If you look at it from the Chinese perspective, you could say they are entirely on the Chinese side. Because after all, the Chinese claim areas up to finger 4, and they're going back from finger 4 to finger 8. So if you look at it, from their side, you could say the buffer zone is entirely on the Chinese side. If we look at it from our side, we say, the buffer zone is entirely on our side. I think it's a good thing that the buffer zone has got created. Both sides are not going to patrol. Just as we are not patrolling up to our claims, so are the Chinese not patrolling up to their claims.
Is that clear that that there will be a buffer zone between figure 4 and 8?
Yes. So that is what has been announced, that in this area there will be no patrolling by either side till such time that further discussions take place and they can arrive at some patrolling arrangement. But as of now, the word used is that there's a temporary moratorium on patrolling on both sides. So I think the advantage or disadvantage, whichever way you want to look at it, is I think equal on both sides.
Okay, General Panag?
I would only differ with General Hooda on one aspect. That is that status quo ante also should have meant that we should be able to patrol up to figure 8, as which we were doing before May last year. But since both sides have agreed not to patrol, so it is all right for the North Bank. Now, South Bank, I have a problem in the sense that our deployment on Kailash Range is on our side of the LAC. It has nothing to do with the Chinese. Just like Chinese have deployed wherever they want in their own area, we have deployed in our area. And here we are getting off that area. And categorically, neither the Chinese have said, nor we have said that we have crossed the LAC. So here, the status quo has got, okay, you can interpret it in the manner that since we moved there after May, yes, but then how does it matter? There are so many troops have moved there after May, all over the place. You have put troops on ground which were never there before. So to that extent, Kailash Range, as I said, is a problem area, and we have lost our dominance there. But having qualified earlier when I made the previous intervention, that I foresee it as a part of an overall all-encompassing agreement. In that case, the Kailash Range will be a small factor.
Isn't that a good point, General Hooda, that you're withdrawing from the Kailash Range, which is something that kept the enemy, in this case, the Chinese side, off balance for the last several months, and now you're withdrawing unilaterally? Or, okay, if not unilaterally, the other guy is also withdrawing, but we don't know right now what's happening in the rest of the area, which is whether it's in Depsang or north of that.
So true, Jyoti. What General Panag is saying is right, that the Kailash Range and the heights that were occupied by us were a part of our own area. It's on our side of the LAC. So, I mean, why should the Chinese have any objection? But as I said earlier, and as General Panag said, I think it's part of an overall sort of agreement. What was the purpose of our occupying those heights on Kailash Range? Mm-hmm. It wasn't that tomorrow we were planning an offensive or an attack on Moldova garrison. I think the idea was to put some pressure on the Chinese because they were acting completely obstinate on the northern bank. They were not willing to go back. Yeah. Maybe an attempt to break the deadlock. And if that was the objective of occupying Kailash Range, to ensure that the process of disengagement starts, we come to some agreement, and then I think that that objective has been achieved.
Okay.
And so and when you are bargaining, there's always, Jyoti, some amount of give and take. You can't say only in one area that we stick to our positions.
No, fair enough. There must be give and take. But the question is, General Panag, you're painting in your column at ThePrint as well. You've painted this much larger picture that you give in the Kailash Range, but then you get elsewhere along the LAC.
As I said, that if we should be looking at long-term peace. So we are the weaker part. Let's face it. All emotions, all rhetoric is not going to make us a strong part.
You think that was a realization? You think that was a realization 9 months of standoff or eyeball to eyeball?
No, I'm sorry. This realization has been with the Indian Army for a long time, and the government also is very clear about it. It is just that bluff and bluster is part of strategy, and that's how we were continuing a two-front war, etc. The fact is that while if China attacks us and we can hold our own, okay, like I have maintained many times that we can still meet China, but we cannot carry the battle into the Chinese side. And once we initiate it, because subsequently what happens, it's unpredictable. Mm-hmm. Right, and we are overall the weaker power. So when you are the weaker power, then you have certain compulsions. And the Chinese, for the last 62 years, they have been hankering for the 59 claim line, and they have got it today. They have nothing more to gain in terms of their prestige, because prestige was staked on their claim line. Beyond that, what is territory?
But how do you say that they have reached the 1959 claim line? On the basis
that's the 1959 claim line is well demarcated on all Indian Army maps. And the talks that were held between the officials of China and India in 1961, it is very much the coordinates are given. Mm-hmm. The only place where they have done a bit of fingering is north of Pangong Tso. Because as per the coordinates, it passes by finger 8, and they have said it passes by finger 4. That's the addition. Otherwise, elsewhere, they have stuck to those coordinates. No change. It's well demarcated. So willy-nilly now what happens if we have an all-encompassing agreement that you have a demarcated LAC Eastern Ladakh?
What do you think, General Hooda? Do you think that the Chinese have come up to this 1959 claim line as a result of these last these ingress in the last several months?
Except Indus Valley.
Except Indus Valley, yeah.
Yeah, so Demchok areas, General Panag said, they're not there in their 1959 claim line. I think we have to see how the overall agreement pans out, Jyoti. So we know they had come up to finger 4, they're going back to finger 8. There is some talk, that they're slightly inside at maybe Gogra, PP15, etc. We really don't know. The main area actually, of contention is now around the Depsang Plains. Mm-hmm. And so I think we'll have to wait to see how, what sort of arrangement is arrived at there. From my understanding, and at least what the Indian Army has been saying, is that there is no permanent presence of the PLA in that area. It is only that they are stopping us from going up to our traditional patrolling points.
But last time when we discussed, when both of you were on a discussion, you said, General Hooda, that up to 2016, when you were Northern Army commander, you were patrolling in those areas.
True. I'm saying so now. What the current situation is that our patrols cannot go. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is, my understanding is that there's no real physical presence of the PLA in that area. It's just that when our patrols go, they come and stop and block the patrols from going up to our traditional area. So I think we have to see how, the agreement on Depsang and subsequent discussions sort of pan out. So is then that they would have, encroached further and sort of come up to their 1959 claim line, or will they agree to go back? I can't say at this stage.
But General Panag, if perhaps the Indian side is looking at, once you withdraw mutually from the northern and the southern banks of the Pangong Tso, once that takes place properly, both sides are happy, it's verified, then you go to the next step, which is the Depsang Plains. And perhaps, of course, we're looking into the future and you cannot prophesize what's going to happen.
Nobody, when you deal at this level, while the military-to-military talks have been going on, focusing on disengagement, okay? I think there have been secret parleys going on between India and China. And this is how all agreements are sorted out. And if they are not, I would be surprised and very disappointed that we have not done that. And if it is just at the moment, as people have been arguing and everybody, it's the first step. And if that's the only step, then I'm afraid it's a sellout in terms of the loss of the Kailash Range. And only thing is, so it's just a second. The first, if you say it's just the first step, as a first step, if you just say that, and you say, okay, we have pulled back from our own territory only, we went there, we come back, and the Chinese have been defeated in figure 4 to 8 because they have gone back to 8. If you want to sell that kind of a thing, yes. But to merely take the first step as a part of negotiations, I think would be naive.
But tell me,
it has to be part of the overall agreement.
But this potential overall agreement that you're talking about, this sounds like one of the, in the past, you've had 3 times that India and China have tried to settle the LOC, the nearly 4,000 kilometer long LOC from the western sector in Ladakh all the way to Arunachal Pradesh. Does it sound like something like this to you, General Hooda? That Prime Minister Modi and the Chinese leadership is perhaps making one more attempt at this?
So let's see. I think that the realization that an unsettled LAC could lead to conflict, could lead to the kind of violence that happened, could lead to worsening of relations between India and China. If that realization has come now, then you could possibly see, as General Panag said, that once all this settles down, and there has been talk about fresh agreements, fresh protocols. You recall when the two foreign ministers met, the last point in their agreement was that we will look at fresh agreements and we look at fresh protocols. If it leads to a demarcation of the LAC, even on maps, and an agreement by both sides as to where the LAC lies, with a certain amount of give and take, I think it would be the most positive thing that could emerge. Because at least once the LAC is clear, this whole business of disputed areas, transgressions will go away. So I'm not sure it will happen, but if it does, I think there could be nothing better than that.
That's a fair point that both of you are referring to, but I just want to bring you to the Chinese foreign minister's statement overnight, where he said that this sort of broad understanding of the withdrawal of both sides, the mutual disengagement, if you like, was signed and sealed during the Moscow talks when External Affairs Minister Jaishankar met his counterpart, Wang Yi, and this was more than 6 months ago. So then if that was an understanding, then how did the Indian soldiers then move up the heights, and how come they've been, eyeball to eyeball in such bad conditions these last several months?
No, we had already moved up to the Kailash Range when they met. I think we moved up to the Kailash Range on 30th of August.
Right.
So we had already moved up.
Yeah, so it happened perhaps just a few days after that.
After that.
In September.
There must have been a lot of more parleys, held in confidence. We are not aware of that, and we are not privy to it. Otherwise, these sort of things just don't happen. And please note, it's the Chinese who announced it. Normally, it's our media that leaks it. Incidentally, the same bit of first agreement had also surfaced on 11th of November after which I think we all spoke on 11th of November. But our media blew it up and tom-tommed it as a great victory, etc. And this time the media has been probably been guided to not to do that. And so there's no tom-tomming, no victory has been declared, and it's a sober kind of assessment that we are on the cusp of probably of bigger things, and let's play it in a mature manner.
But what's the significance of the Chinese announcing it, both the Defence Ministry as well as the Chinese Foreign Ministry? General Hooda?
No, so as General Panag is saying, the agreement would have been reached. It's just that they announced it yesterday. The Parliament was in session, and therefore, obviously the statement would have to come in Parliament from our Defence Minister, which came almost immediately. I mean, the very next day. And in fact, he announced much more details about the agreement and how it is going to play out. The Chinese statement was, very brief to say that simultaneous disengagement is taking place from the north and south flank.
Mm-hmm. I want to also ask you both about there is a TASS report. The Russian news agency TASS has a report which says that 45 Chinese soldiers were killed in the Galwan Valley. You remember that incident of June 15th when 20 Indian soldiers lost their lives. General Panag, do you buy that?
I think these reports are generally speculative. Whether 45 Chinese died or whether 100 died were killed in action, but we lost 20 soldiers killed in action, including the commanding officer. And I have said that before. Let me say it. It was a shameful incident that we allowed unarmed soldiers to get into kind of a medieval and primitive combat like this and suffer casualties. I think that's all I want to say on the subject.
Okay, so last question to you, General Hooda. What is the timing of this announcement by the Chinese side and now the Defence Minister? Why is it significant now?
So I wouldn't, Jyoti, put any sort of great significance to why on February so and so date has it been announced. I think the standoff is almost 10 months. They've seen through the winters. I think there's a realization on both sides that this issue needs to be resolved. It's neither easy for our soldiers, nor would it have been easy for the PLA to stay through the winters with such large amount of forces.
The winter's almost over, isn't it? So it would have
Yeah.
been another couple of months.
Yeah, but living through the winters gives you a different kind of experience as to what the difficulties are. Keeping and managing so many soldiers, through the winter months on the LAC in Ladakh.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but can I ask you to compare this with Siachen? After all, Indian soldiers have been on Siachen since 1984. So is this comparable, or how would you compare it?
So Siachen is much more difficult, Jyoti. There is no doubt about it, and we've had soldiers. Right, you're right there, but there's also a lot of experience that has gone into how to survive in Siachen. The numbers are much smaller as compared to. So we have only a brigade here compared to we were talking of 50,000 soldiers here. The fact that we don't have the ability to build up infrastructure at such fast pace. We can say anything and we can show all kinds of images to say, oh, these are our heated huts, etc. I'm sure the soldiers at frontline would have been staying in much, much more basic accommodation.
That's right.
I would say on both sides. And then, if you look at it from China's perspective, would they also want a situation of perpetual hostility along the LAC with India? Something that is, quite adversely affecting their bilateral relations. I think all these issues would have gone into consideration of, is all this worth it of what is happening on the LAC?
General Panag, do you think that that perhaps the additional element of a new US president who has reached out to Prime Minister Modi, they've had a couple of conversations, it's believed that Joe Biden is not going to be going to continue to be as tough on China. Do you think that could be a factor, an extraneous factor, or it just the Chinese president waking up one morning and saying, okay, I think we should come back?
I don't think so. I don't think that's a factor at all. And nations do not take into account what other superpowers feel unless you are totally under their thumb. And neither India nor China, I think, really considers it that way. I don't think that's a factor. What General Hooda has said, I totally support it. The total line of control which we are manning with Pakistan is just about 725 odd kilometers. Here it is 2,000 kilometers. And our entire resources of our mountain divisions would be committed in manning this, because today it is Ladakh where we can probably do it with 2 divisions. And then there's a central sector. Then tomorrow if China does something in the northeast, then we'll have to hold that as well.
No, it's okay. I can understand that. But why the Chinese want to withdraw? I can understand that the Indians want to come.
Chinese have achieved what they want. They have advanced up to the 1959 claim line, and they have proved to the world, domestically we may say whatever we like. The rest of the world understands that the Chinese came, they intruded, and India could do little about it, except contain them from further ingress. So, whose will was imposed on whom? We have lost prestige internationally as well as in the region. And we do not have the capability to take the battle to them or evict them by force. So this is obvious to the whole world. And Chinese have achieved their aim. They have asserted a bit of their hegemony over India. They have reached the 59 claim line, and they have prevented us from developing border infrastructure in all these buffer zones, which as I said, are likely to emerge in Depsang Plain. That's where it's overall. So what more did the Chinese want as a short-term political aim? This is what they wanted. They've got it.
Right. General Panag, General Hooda, thank you so much for participating in the print debates, for your time. We will be watching the story as it unfolds, and I'm sure to come back to you for your analysis. Thank you again.
Thank you, Jyoti. It's a privilege to be with you.